LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the June 12th edition of LiberalViewer Live, Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out 15 of the weekend's most interesting, informative clips, I think, for what should be an educational media criticism and political analysis fair use video for you again tonight. There was really bad news over the last 12 hours, this terrible shooting in Orlando. My live clip roundup isn't really a good way to really give developments on that kind of breaking news story, although this morning what happened is that while the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News were recording their Sunday morning news analysis shows that I cover, they started to get some more information. It started to break as to the name of the person, possible motivations of the person, and so I'm going to do a little media analysis comparing some different coverage from the different from 4 of the 5 networks, and that's going to be the first 6 clips I show. Then I'll have a few clips on the Republican side of the presidential race and a few on the Democratic side of the presidential race, and then a couple or one clip at the end on marijuana legalization and a discussion of how marijuana may affect someone's ability to drive. That's from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher. I have 5 clips from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher this week, and some of them are political comedy. It doesn't really seem like a political comedy day, but they're from last Friday before all this happened, and I'm going to fit them into the political news part of the show. But like I said, and if you're watching this as a recorded show, I'll put time indexes down in the video description so you can skip amongst the 4 topics that I'm covering. I've also put a link to this clip list of the 15 clips I'm using. It's actually 15 clips and 2 still images. And if you can understand my notes, you can kind of follow along and see where the show's going that way also. So like I said, I'm going to start with different coverage of this shooting in Orlando, Florida, which was still just breaking this morning. Oh, and I also wanted to start with one of my live viewer comments. I saw some live viewers were already here. This is from Karak, is that how do you say that? Was basically criticizing my choice of, I suppose I could leave it up a little longer so you can read it, basically criticizing my choice of the thumbnail image for this video because it's the face of the shooter in this case, or the alleged shooter. The person, and there's a lot of evidence that points to him as the shooter in this mass shooting in Orlando. And he's saying I shouldn't have used his face for the thumbnail. I actually, when I used the thumbnail, it was between that and something from Real Time with Bill Maher. I decided to use the Orlando shooter's face for the thumbnail because I thought that it was more representative of the most number of clips from tonight's show, and it was the most recognizable image that to stand for the Orlando shooting at this point. And I think it may end up with this video demonetized. I don't know, that YouTube has a history of doing that for these terrorist mass shooting type things, that videos that discuss them get demonetized. But I want to start off by comparing some of the breaking coverage, first looking at Fox News, which of course really emphasized the possible Islamic terrorism connection here even before it was released by the police. And I want to show how at the beginning of Fox News Sunday they showed how their reporter Peter Doocy actually asked an important question as to whether it was involving Islamic radicalism, but of course they did it because they're really hot for it to be Islamic radicalism, a lot of the people on Fox News, because that's their big issue on the right, and you can pretty much tell that from this 2.5 minute report from Fox News Sunday this morning that both starts and ends with the fact that he's a Muslim. Over here.
Any reason to think there's a connection to radical Islamic terror?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the next clip will start and end with he's a Muslim. This is Peter Doocy's question that is kind of committing journalism, like I said, where he asked the question that you can see. You can't really hear it, but they put the words up on the screen that got the FBI agent to say that they were pretty sure that it did involve some sort of Islamic or ideological leanings that way.
Any reason to think there's a connection to radical Islamic terror?
I would say at this time we're looking into all angles right now. We do have suggestions that that individual may have gleanings towards that particular ideology, but right now we can't say definitively.
It appears he was organized and well prepared.
That was Fox's Peter Doocy asking the FBI about the possibility of an Islamic terror connection in the deadly mass shooting at an Orlando nightclub. Let's go live to Peter in Orlando for more. Peter, the latest?
And Bret, we know that 7 hours ago, Pulse, which bills itself as Orlando's premier gay nightclub, came under attack, and things were so dire they tweeted desperately, "Everyone get out of Pulse and keep running." Things started at 2:02, just about a block and a half behind us here in Orlando, about a 10-mile drive from all of the theme parks, when an Orlando police officer who was working security, engaged this gunman in a firefight. There were some backup officers that came. The gunman ran back inside where about 320 clubgoers were enjoying themselves late on a Saturday night, early on Sunday. Many managed to escape, but 30 hostages were held until about 5 a.m. So for 3 hours, this person held 30 or so hostages until the SWAT team decided at 5 a.m., while they still had the cover of darkness, they needed to go in and try to rescue those people. During the rescue, a 9-man SWAT team managed to shoot and kill the attacker. But once he was neutralized, they realized that there were approximately 20 dead clubgoers laying inside. Now, we do not have a precise victim count yet because the facility is still being swept for devices. We know that the shooter had a long gun, a handgun, and some kind of a device that concerned authorities enough that they have had the bomb squad in there all morning. This is still an unfolding situation. Keep in mind, it has been just over 7 hours since the first shots rang out, and we have an update coming from the FBI here in a few minutes. They say that they are not ruling anything out, but that they do have indications this shooter has leanings towards radical Islamic terror. Bret?
Peter Doocy live in Orlando.
Oh, so yeah, that was the clip that starts and ends with leanings towards Islamic terror, and you'll see that's how they began Fox News Sunday this morning, and they also ended with like a news flash. We can confirm he is a Muslim. He is a Muslim. Well, not exactly that, but that's pretty much how Fox News is. And if you've been watching Fox News, the Fox News channel in the last couple hours, it's gotten a lot worse. I have to say, this was just a taste of what was to come over in this clip.
Do we consider this an act of terrorism? Absolutely. We are investigating this from all parties' perspective as an act of terrorism. Anytime that we have potentially dozens of victims in any of our communities, that I think we can qualify that as a terrorist activity.
Breaking news now. We can confirm that the shooter, the suspect in this case who is dead, was in fact Muslim, and that authorities say the number of fatalities will increase dramatically, we're told. Stay tuned to this channel and Fox News channel for continuing coverage of that mass shooting at that nightclub in Orlando. Again, right now the number stands at 20 killed, 42 others wounded after that gunman took hostages and opened fire earlier this morning. The gunman shot dead. We'll have continuing coverage here on Fox. Thanks for joining us here in Washington.
So you can see they broke in at the end of Fox News Sunday, guest hosted by Bret Baier, to say that the guy was a Muslim, which a Muslim American he did turn out to be. And then they also said the number of casualties is expected to rise dramatically because it went from 20 to 50. Anyone who was watching the coverage during the morning, there was this big jump at one point from 20 dead to 50 dead, which is when they started realizing how many bodies there were inside the nightclub after they went in there, apparently. But I'm going to give you some more updates on this and some comparisons of how the different news programs covered it, and I'll try to give you a better an idea of what time, how much information they had when they made the report. This is actually the earlier report. I just showed like an earlier and a later report from Fox News Sunday. This is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where they don't really emphasize the Muslim thing. In fact, you'll see that George Stephanopoulos actually interprets that question and answer that Fox News had about how he was maybe motivated by an Islamic ideology. they change it to maybe motivated by a radical ideology. George Stephanopoulos mentioned, or that's his intro to their reporter, and then you'll see their reporter gives a fact that I didn't really see mentioned on Fox News at all, that it was Latin night at the gay disco or gay bar or whatever, the Pulse in Orlando, as I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
He acted alone, but he was organized and well prepared, armed with an assault rifle, a handgun, at least one other suspicious device. They also believe he traveled to Orlando from outside the area and that he may have been motivated by radical ideology. Officials calling this an incident of domestic terror. We have extensive coverage, beginning with ABC's Lauren Lister on the ground in Orlando. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning, George. You know, this is where it all happened, and you can see that there is still a police presence, still crime tape blocking off the side streets. And I want to show you, now that it is cleared, we can actually see the sign for that nightclub pulls just down about a block and a half. The scene where a fun night of dancing, it was Latin night, quickly turned into terror when at around 2 a.m. that gunman went on a shooting rampage. Now, eyewitnesses that we've talked to describe a scene of terror and chaos with bodies on the ground and blood everywhere. One witness describing to us how he climbed on the ground crawling, and when he came out, according to him, police were tagging bodies based on their injuries, presumably prioritizing their care. Another eyewitness overnight was still texting with someone inside the club who he said was in the bathroom and said he had been shot. We now know that it was a hostage situation. That's how authorities are describing it. And then at 5 a.m. they decided to rescue those people. They say rescuing about 30 people. Now, the 42 injured were taken to area hospitals, and one of them is just literally at the other end of this block. This is where we saw first responders overnight rushing, ambulances dropping people off. This began on lockdown at 2 a.m. and some of those hospitals, that lockdown has now been lifted. But this is where family and friends who believe that they have a loved one that may have been a victim in this nightclub have been told to gather to get any word that they can from their loved ones, while anybody in that nightclub is told to go to police headquarters and report to them, George.
Okay, Lauren Lister, thanks.
So that was how the ABC reported it, and a lot of the facts are the same, but I thought it was interesting that George Stephanopoulos at the beginning emphasized the radical ideology instead of radical Islamic ideology that you saw over on the Fox News side, and over that was even clearer, I think, at the end of it wasn't actually the end of ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. A lot of the networks preempted their programming, and so at the very beginning of This Week with George Stephanopoulos here in my Pacific time zone, they had some actual ABC News special reporting on the incident, and George Stephanopoulos was there, and this actually takes place later than the clip I showed before, even though it was right at the very beginning of the program. That's why I'm showing it later, and you'll see they give the basic facts here. Even, I believe they give the name of the alleged shooter here, but they never mention that he's Muslim. I guess you're supposed to infer that, which you can see over in this clip.
50 dead, 53 injured in the worst shooting in American history in Orlando overnight. The gunman has been shot as well, the gunman killed as well. Police believe, and officials believe he acted alone, but searching now for ties to ISIS, treating this as a domestic terror incident. His name there, Omar Mateen, U.S. citizen, 29 years old, from Port St. Lucie, Florida. That is all for us right now. We're going to stay on top of this. You can get the news.
So you can see there that ABC, they didn't even mention he was Muslim, even though they mentioned possible ties to ISIS and Islamic terrorism, but they never even mentioned that the shooter was Muslim. There was no breaking news, the shooter is Muslim, like on Fox News. And now I actually want to compare the ABC coverage and the Fox News coverage to what was over on CBS. CBS's Face the Nation was completely preempted here in the Pacific time zone. I watched it all on YouTube, or almost all of it's available on YouTube, including Bernie Sanders' interview. There's a link down in the video description where you can see that. But on my actual broadcast time, when I recorded Face the Nation on my TiVo, what I got was a special report from CBS News, including the report from Scott Pelley, the CBS anchor, that I thought was interesting in comparison to the last two reports, because first, it really emphasizes the type of weapon, because guns is another important part of this debate all the time. And then I think it emphasizes the anti-gay part of it, and even gives a fact about this statement from the father of the alleged shooter that you may or may not have seen, and I will discuss after you see that clip over here.
Of what the police have told us about the timeline of this incident. At 2 o'clock in the morning, apparently a police officer working off-duty at the club heard gunshots inside. He responded to those gunshots, got into a gunfight with the gunman, and was slightly injured, apparently. The gunman went back into the club and resumed firing. The police chief has told us that the principal weapon that was used was an AR-15 assault rifle. Now, that is the type of weapon that's a semi-automatic. It fires one round with each pull of the trigger. It's not a fully automatic machine gun, but it is capable of holding very high-capacity magazines that hold up to 25, 50, even 100 rounds. And obviously, a huge number of rounds were expended in the shooting of more than 100 people in this club. The police say that they were contacted by hostages who had their cell phones, and they were telling the police officers where they were in the club and they needed immediate help. The SWAT team went in. They crashed an armored car through one of the walls of the club, threw in a number of stun grenades, flashbang grenades that don't throw any shrapnel, but they make a big noise and a bright light to distract the gunman, and then they opened fire on the gunman. The police chief has told us that about 30 hostages were saved by this SWAT team action. Now, as Mark Strassman was telling us a moment ago, the gunman has been identified from multiple sources as a 29-year-old Florida man, Omar Mateen. Mr. Mateen's parents are apparently of Afghan descent. His father has been speaking to the media and has told reporters that, in his opinion, none of this has anything to do with religion, that their son did have anti-gay feelings. This was a gay bar in Orlando that was attacked, and that is what the father is saying the motivation was. If you're looking at this picture now.
So that was actually, from what I saw, an NBC local news report talked to the father and of the alleged shooter, and he said that his son had gotten upset after seeing two men kissing a couple months ago, and probably most people have heard that story by the time they're viewing this, especially if you're watching this as a recorded show. I also thought it was kind of weird that Scott Pelley, in his description of the shooter in this case, said that his parents were of Afghan descent. Actually, from what I understand, his parents are both immigrants from Afghanistan, which means that he's of Afghan descent, but his parents are actually originally from Afghanistan, not of Afghan descent, although I guess they are of Afghan descent as well, but not really that specific. I don't know why he said it that way. I guess it may just some little quirk. And I want to show one more clip on the coverage of the Orlando shooting before I move on to the political clips and then the marijuana legalization clip at the end. This is a brief clip from CNN State of the Union, which was also totally preempted by the coverage of the Orlando shooting, although Jake Tapper was still there and he did all sorts of coverage. The one interview I thought was worth taking a clip from was the one he did with the mayor of Orlando. Buddy Dyer is his name, and he actually had some direct facts from his police force that I want to show him describing, although it's somewhat similar to what you just heard Scott Pelley say. And the other reason I chose this clip is because I think CNN was the first program to start calling this the worst mass shooting in U.S. history, which it is. Most fatalities of any mass shooting in U.S. history. And that's pretty much, I think all the media has gone there now and is using that as their main term. Even over on Fox News, where for a while they were kind of fighting for the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. And I think they're still using that a little bit, but I think CNN, I'm pretty sure CNN was the trend starter amongst the corporate news media outlets this morning with that over here.
And specifically for the city of Orlando, Florida, you had to tell the world that this is in fact the deadliest shooting, mass shooting in the history of the United States.
There's no way to describe it other than horrific and unimaginable. I am, however, proud of the way that our OPD, OFD, and surrounding law enforcement agencies responded. The victims are large in number, but there were 350 individuals in the nightclub when the shooter began, and it could have been worse.
It could have been worse indeed, and we've been hearing heroic stories not just about first responders, but about individuals in the nightclub taking care of each other, helping each other out, tending to each other's wounds. But let us turn to those who are still in harm's way. There are 53 individuals in the hospitals and the trauma centers in and around Orlando. I know that there is a call for those in the area who are O negative, O positive, or AB blood types.
And actually, all the network cable programs covered the blood donation side of the story, but I've seen a lot of social media talking about how gay men are not allowed to donate blood in a lot of places, and that's sort of an archaic rule, and that may be something that comes out of this whole incident because since it was an attack on a gay bar, and there are a lot of people in the gay community that would like to donate blood, but apparently they're not allowed to, and that's why I stopped that clip at the end there. I wanted to show it's an example of how the corporate news media outlets were covering the blood donation part of this, but I didn't hear anyone mention anything about how gays weren't allowed to donate and how that's actually a problem. So like I said, that's the last clip directly on the Orlando shooting coverage. I'm going to transition now to the Republican side of the 2016 presidential race, Donald Trump, and it's just a couple clips on the problems he was having this week, and it was, with his nasty comments about this Mexican-American judge and his Trump University case. And you might think that this Orlando shooting situation, this big news story would push that away and it wouldn't have any meaning anymore. But I noticed that Donald Trump is still kind of being saying things that are probably going to get him in trouble on Twitter. Here's one tweet I saw from Donald Trump this morning. Appreciate the congrats for being right on radical Islamic terrorism. I don't want congrats. I want toughness and vigilance. We must be smart. I don't know. That seems kind of like a tin ear to me that, this isn't really an I told you so moment, especially from someone who wants to be like the president, has various different roles, and among those roles is to be like the mourner in chief, and the in the UK, they have their prime minister who's political, and then they have their royals to be their head of state and do the ceremonial things and lead the nation in times of travail or whatever. But we combine those roles in the president, and so we want our president to be a little bit more compassionate than appreciate the congrats for being right on all these people getting shot, basically, is what that tweet says if you read it. And so then I want to move on to the coverage they did have some leftover political coverage on some of the news programs that weren't totally preempted. Over on ABC's This Week, they had an extended interview with Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, who, after the clips I showed last week where Donald Trump wouldn't back off on saying, he's Mexican, I'm building a wall, that's why he's biased against me, and, wouldn't take back his racist statement, went on to say it was, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan went on to say it was a textbook case of racism, but also went on to say he's still supporting Donald Trump, which George Stephanopoulos explored with him over in this clip.
And Donald Trump's still stirring up some anxiety in the GOP and working to put accusations of racism behind him.
I am the least, just so you know, I am the least racist person. The least racist person that you've ever seen. The least. I mean, give me a break.
His criticism of that judge down in San Diego is still drawing some criticism as well. And House Speaker Paul Ryan, the most powerful elected Republican in the country, denounced those comments.
claiming a person can't do their job because of their race is sort of like the textbook definition of a racist comment.
Thanks very much. But when we spoke earlier this week, Ryan insisted he's standing by his endorsement of Donald Trump. You said in explaining why you're standing by your endorsement of Mr. Trump that what matters more to you more than anything are our core principles. But what core principle is more important to the party of Lincoln than standing up against racism?
That's why I did that. That's why I spoke out against it.
Yet,
look, this is the party of Lincoln, the party of Jack Kemp and Ronald Reagan. So that is why we stand up and speak against any conversation, any kind of comment that has any racist.
But this isn't the first time you've had to do that. When he does it disavow the KKK, you had to speak out against that. That
isn't the first time I've had to do that, and it won't be the last time if this continues. Hopefully this won't continue. Hopefully the campaign will move in a better direction so that it can be one that we can all be proud of. We got two choices: Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. A Republican presidency, a Democrat presidency. Hillary Clinton is promising to double down on the Obama policies. Those policies are wrong. They're not helping. Our country's going in the wrong direction. So we're offering the country an alternative. And we need a Republican president to work with to put that alternative together.
But does that president have the temperament it takes to be commander-in-chief?
I can't speak for his stage presence, but in private, I find his temperament to be much better than what you see on stage.
So you're confident he could be an effective commander-in-chief?
Look, I believe that he's certainly better than Hillary Clinton. These are the choices that we have. And here's the question I ask. Do I believe that these principles and these policies that flow from those principles have a better chance of making the law with Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton? Absolutely, I do believe that. And I think that's what's necessary to save this country from the bad path that it's on right now.
Even if that president then...
I don't know. I don't know if you can square that circle or whatever turn of phrase you want to use where you think what he's saying is dangerous and racist, but you still support him for president and he's better than Hillary Clinton. I don't know. It's pretty difficult to understand, and I think the establishment of the Republican Party is having real problems with Donald Trump and with their own voters, who, of course, chose Donald Trump. That's where he gets his power, and that's why there's such a split in the Republican Party, and it may actually have lasting negative effects on the Republican Party for many years to come that could be some positive outcome to all this nasty Trump racism. And although I would have preferred, as I said many times, that he not be the nominee, even though it's probably will end up being better for Democrats that Trump is the nominee. It's just worse for the country. And I don't know. I think that it's going to be a stain on people in the establishment like Speaker Paul Ryan and others like Mitch McConnell. I showed last week sticking with him, and I want to show a couple jokes Bill Maher made about that. As long as we're over in the political clips on the political race, I'll show some of the jokes Bill Maher made about the political races at this point. And this is two jokes I put together, one about Mitch McConnell and one about Paul Ryan and their difficulty in accepting Donald Trump. Over here.
Oh, I swear to God, Mitch McConnell said, it's very important that Trump picks a great vice presidential candidate because, quote, it's pretty obvious he doesn't know a lot about the issues. And McConnell supports him. This is as close as you can get to literally saying I'm with stupid. So, yeah, they're trying, they're trying to bring Trump around. They got two strategies in this party. One, dump him, which is hard to do. The other thing is tame him. Put King Kong in chains, bring him over here. They're just so tired of having to apologize for this guy. All that stuff about the Mexican-American judge who's ruling on his Trump University case. Paul Ryan said what Trump said is, quote, a textbook definition of a racist comment. And that is something Republicans oppose. Not racism, textbooks. I kid the Republicans.
So I actually thought that was funny last Friday when Bill Maher told that joke before all this stuff happened in Orlando, and I don't see any harm in showing those couple jokes. Especially, I wanted to point out one thing about Paul Ryan's textbook racism charge or comment, which I showed both from ABC and then also Bill Maher talking about it. Last week I talked about how people say Islamophobia isn't racism because Islam isn't a race. Well, if you look in the textbook definition of racism, you're not actually going to find prejudice against Mexicans because Mexicans also are not a race. So it's kind of odd to me that they chose the textbook racism phrase to apply to something that actually is a little bit of a stretch of the word racism. I don't think it's too much. That's what I said last week. I also think that people say that anti-Muslim feeling is racist, or I think racism has become more of a general term, but and it generally refers to prejudice and bigotry, but maybe I'm over-interpreting the word racism. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. So that's the last of the brief clips on the Republican side of the race, because a lot of the coverage was really abbreviated by the coverage of the Orlando shooting. So I have a few clips on the Democratic side, including a few clips of Bernie Sanders. But before I get to the just straight Democratic side, there's one sort of transitional clip. It's one more joke from Bill Maher's monologue I wanted to show. And this is, I think, the last joke. There are a couple more Bill Maher clips, but they're not jokes, they're discussions. And this is Bill Maher actually talking about Donald Trump's fight with Elizabeth Warren and the way he calls her Pocahontas. And I thought he had a pretty good comeback that she might be able to use over in this clip.
But you know what? You know who else wants Elizabeth Warren to be the vice president? Donald Trump. He tweeted that. He said, I hope she's the vice president. Right. He calls her Pocahontas. You see this? Pocahontas, goofy Pocahontas. He's just jealous Indians know how to run casinos. All right, we got a great show.
So yeah, I thought that was a pretty good comeback for the whole Pocahontas line. I don't know if it'll show up on Elizabeth Warren's Twitter feed, but you can let me know down in the comment section what you think about the whole Pocahontas charge against Elizabeth Warren and whether that's a good comeback from Bill Maher. And so now I actually want to move on to the Democratic side, and I'm sticking with a Bill Maher clip, but this isn't really jokes. I mean, I think there may be a little bit of humor thrown in along the way, but Bill Maher did coverage of, gave some coverage of what happened in the Democratic side of the race this week that didn't get a lot of coverage in the Sunday morning news analysis shows, because of all the coverage of the Orlando shooting. Basically, Hillary Clinton wrapped up the Democratic nomination this week. She won California, but Bernie Sanders has also accomplished a lot, and that's basically the subject of this next clip from Bill Maher, where he talks about both all the things Bernie Sanders accomplished and then how Hillary Clinton basically won fair and square, as I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
To hear it, but it is over. It did end. I do want to say a few things more about Bernie Sanders. One, I don't think it matters when he gets out. I don't think it matters. You know, they're all shoving it. Bernie, take all the time you want. Do it today. As long as he does it by the convention, at the convention. He revealed how much of this country really is left-wing. We didn't know that before this campaign. That is huge and historic.
Well, I mean, people complain that Bernie, in his speech the other night, didn't sort of mention the historic moment of Hillary Clinton, being the nominee. But Hillary Clinton did not mention the historic moment of a socialist in the United States of America winning 22 states. In the United States of America.
She mentioned more than he did. I also think he could have won. I do, because I think the people who were for him would have worked really hard, and like I say, he revealed that it's there. He forced the centrist in the race to go way left, and by the way, because he's not coming over immediately, forcing her to stay there, which I understand. I also would like to say to all the people who are saying, well, you know, he got intoxicated with the crowds. I don't think so. I don't know him that well, but he's done the show for a long time. I mean, he was here a couple of weeks ago. It was amazing with all the Secret Service and the entourage. He used to come here in an Uber that he was driving. He's just not the type. I don't think he's intoxicated. I think it's a bigger thing than that. But I guess got to say to the Bernie folks, she did win fair and square. There should be no... Let me just give you the stats so you know that There should be no quarterback controversy here, okay? She won a majority of the pledged delegates. She won the popular vote. She won a majority of the states. She won all the important swing states. She won 27 out of 39 primaries. If it wasn't for caucuses, which are less democratic, he wouldn't have been as competitive as he was. And she finished big. That was a big talking point. Oh, you know, she's limping to the finish line. No, she kicked his ass at the finish line. So it can't be the case, like I said, where it's fair when you win and rigged when you lose. She won, and I think it's often seen when someone has big crowds that means something. Trump gets big crowds, he gets big crowds. Her crowds, they're just different people. They're older, they're women. They don't, would I go to a political rally? No. It's for people who have a lot of time on their hands. It's who shows up in the voting booth.
And I have to kind of agree with Bill Maher's point at the end there, and I wanted to include an explanation for those of you who watched my show before Bernie came to Sacramento or saw on my Facebook page that I was considering going to the Bernie rally. I kind of had time to go for the time Bernie Sanders was there, but with the huge long lines and you have to get there, it's like a 5 or 6 hour time commitment to watch a half-hour Bernie Sanders speech, and they most likely won't let you bring in your video camera, which is why, for me, I didn't end up going to Bernie Sanders rallies, although I watched a lot of them, and I even watched video that the Bernie Sanders campaign put out, or of one YouTube channel that covers the Bernie Sanders campaign put out of the Sacramento rally. I watched it, and a lot of people I knew were there, but I just didn't have time. Maybe it's because I have like family responsibilities and kind of a more conventional schedule with, you know, dinner and, you know, childcare errands to run, you know, like after school activities, that kind of thing. But anyway, I wanted to agree with that part of what Bill Maher said, and also just comment on the point that it's odd that Bill Maher was the one who really gave the most in-depth coverage to what Bernie Sanders accomplished, and then also pointed out what Hillary Clinton accomplished. But it's basically because he was doing his coverage before there was this other big news story that all the other programs that I take my clips from didn't focus on. Oh, and I saw someone down in the live comments while I was talking posted this. Blue Goop said, "Wow, Tom Morello, cool." And actually at the end of this set of clips on the Democratic side of the race, I'm going to show an argument that Bill Maher and Tom Morello had on whether there's enough of a difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But before I get to that, I want to show 3 clips of Bernie Sanders interviews. He did an interview on Meet the Press and an interview on Face the Nation, and an interview on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. I think it was supposed to be on State of the Union, and that was preempted because I thought I saw the list of guests for the Sunday shows included him going on all 4 shows but Fox News Sunday, which made me almost think that this could be his swan song. We might not see him on the shows for a while, but I don't know. I guess as long as they're willing to have him, he's willing to answer their questions. But you'll see he sounds like he's kind of winding up his campaign, as you'll see in this first clip of Chuck Todd asking him, are you an active candidate? And with his answer and his answer to Chuck Todd's follow-up, it seems pretty clear that he's not really an active candidate anymore, which makes sense because, as Bill Maher explained at the end of that last clip, Hillary Clinton basically beat him this week. And you can kind of hear it in his answer on NBC this morning here.
Questions before I let you go. Are you still an active candidate for president?
Well, let me just say this. I am doing everything that I can and will continue to do everything that I can to make sure that Donald Trump does not become president of the United States. I think this man, in a dozen different ways, is not fit to become president. I think the idea that he is running on a campaign based on bigotry, insulting Mexicans and Muslims and women, it's hard to believe that that is really happening in the year 2016. So I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that he is not elected president of the United States. I will be meeting with Secretary Clinton on Tuesday evening, I believe, and we will be chatting about her campaign. And I simply want to get a sense of what kind of platform she will be supporting, whether she will be vigorous in standing up for working families and the middle class, moving aggressively in climate change, health care for all, making public colleges and universities tuition free. And after we have that kind of discussion, and after we can determine whether or not we are going to have a strong and progressive platform, I will be able to make other decisions.
I was just going to say, that doesn't sound like you are an active candidate. It sounds like you're winding down your campaign. You're just trying to decide how comfortable you're going to be in supporting Hillary Clinton. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, no, what's fair is that what our campaign has always been about are addressing the many crises facing this country. And there are millions of people who want bold change in this country. And what we have got to determine between now and the Democratic convention, and by the way, Chuck, we're going to have well over 1,900 delegates at that convention, is what kind of platform and what kind of agenda there will be if Secretary Clinton gets elected, if she wins the election. And I have got to make sure that working with all kinds of people throughout this country, we are going to have an agenda that stands up to Wall Street, that is aggressive on the issues that people who have supported me feel strongly about.
What matters more?
So you can see from his answer there, he didn't really sound like an active candidate. He sounded very focused on getting changes in the platform. And in the one other question I wanted to show from NBC's Meet the Press, you'll see that he seems focused on the platform here, even though he says he's just as interested in Hillary Clinton's vice presidential nomination when he talks about most in his answer. And he tacks on something about leadership at the end, but almost all of his answer is, again, about what is important for him to get into the platform at the Democratic convention over here.
To you, though, a platform that's progressive leaning that you're comfortable with, or a running mate that she picks that doubles down on progressive politics? What would be more of the important commitment to you from Hillary Clinton? Supporting that progressive platform or a progressive running mate?
It's not either or. It is both and everything else. Look, politics is not a game. There are 47 million people living in poverty, 28 million people who have no health insurance, 40,000 people a year who die because they don't get to the doctor when they should. Millions of people struggling with student debt. Climate change is a threat to the whole planet. These are real issues. And what I have got to see and want to see is the Democrats come up not only with a progressive platform, but with an agenda and with the leadership that will transform this country, stand up to the big money interest, and address the many, many serious problems we face.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders, I appreciate you.
So you can see he does seem much more interested in the platform issues than in the leadership or the running mate issue, but he didn't really answer the question as to one being more important to him than the other. I don't know whether you can really hold a candidate to the platform. That a lot of times they're not really that useful in terms of predicting what candidates are going to do when they get into office. And Bernie Sanders talked about that in a clip that I didn't pick, but it's because his answer, he gave similar answers to different questions, and his answer was somewhat similar to the answer that he gives in this last Bernie Sanders clip I'm going to show. This is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where George Stephanopoulos actually shows a tweet from Jill Stein, who's the Green Party candidate for president. And I wanted to show this because I know some of my viewers are going to move to the Green Party if it's Hillary Clinton. And I know a lot of people locally, my friends on the left here in Sacramento, who are likely going to vote for the Green Party over Hillary Clinton because they supported Bernie Sanders and they don't like Hillary Clinton, which is not what I'm going to do. And Bernie Sanders explains, or his reaction to Jill Stein's tweet, she was arguing that, Bernie Sanders wanted to lead a revolution and Hillary Clinton is not a revolution. And His answer kind of makes sense, as I will discuss after you watch it over here.
Sounds like you're prepared to play a pretty constructive role with Hillary Clinton after speaking to her on Tuesday night. But as you know, a lot of your supporters still pretty upset. And Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, is reaching out to them. She's had this tweet. She said, "Don't forget, Bernie Sanders supporters sign up for a political revolution. Hillary is the antithesis of the revolution." Do you agree with that? And do you believe that Hillary Clinton can lead a political revolution?
Well, I don't think Hillary Clinton can lead a political revolution. But I think if Hillary Clinton is smart, and she certainly is smart, she will understand that good public policy, taking on the big money interest and standing up for working families, standing up for the environment, standing up for clean water, is in fact good politics. Can she do that? Yes. Will she go as far as I would like her to go? No, she won't. But I think what millions of people really want to understand and see is what kind of commitment she has to addressing the real crises in this country and transforming the Democratic Party away from a party which simply is there in many respects to raise money from the wealthy into a party which listens to the pain of a declining middle class and 47 million people living in poverty and shows the courage to tell the big money interests that this world is going to change.
Donald Trump is likely to use you.
And you know, that's why I voted for Bernie Sanders last Tuesday here in California. I actually went to the poll. If you saw on my Facebook feed, I showed my facebook.com/LiberalViewer page. I put up a photo of me going to the polling place, and I did vote for Bernie Sanders, not because I thought he might win California, but I didn't think there was very much of a chance at all of him winning the nomination as of last Tuesday. But I just hope that he's going to move the party towards those things that he said are both good public policy and good politics, that are, moving the country in the direction of fighting for working families rather than the big corporate moneyed interests. And it is true that the Democratic Party has been captured to much too large a degree by corporate interests and the big moneyed interests. Both parties, there are a lot of issues that they won't take on because of various corporate interests, and I've talked about those over the last few years of my show. And I don't agree, however, with people who think that there's no difference between the parties, or that it's not important to elect a Democrat over a Republican. And Bill Maher and Tom Morello had an argument that I teased a little earlier in the program, where Tom Morello basically made that argument that they're, two corporate monopoly, there's a corporate monopoly over the two parties. And Bill Maher, I think, had a pretty good counter argument, as I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
Sorry to be a cynic, but I think it's important to point out that the lesser of two evils is not a figure of speech. Every time we hold our nose in the voting booth to vote for which one of the corporate-controlled major parties shoves down our throat, that's why there's been this Trump insurrection. That's why there's the Sanders insurrection. It's because people realize that systemically there's a problem that's not going to go away as long as this two-party corporate monopoly is in place.
That's very easy to say when you have a comfortable life. There's like hundreds of thousands of people in Florida who did not get Medicaid because the governor is a Republican. And if the governor was a Democrat, an imperfect Democrat, a corporatist Democrat, they would actually be getting health care and not dying. So it's very easy to...
I'm not arguing that there are not shades of difference between the candidates, and those shades of difference aren't.
But it makes differences in actual. But it makes differences in actual people's lives, especially the ones who you purport to be most for, the poor people.
Yeah, well, there are shades of difference, but you can either settle for shades of difference, or you can aim for the world you really want to live in and work in.
You can aim for it, but if you don't settle, you don't get nothing.
That's an argument against women getting the right to vote. It's an argument against slavery. Let's just incrementally work towards.
Yeah, no, it's not like it. You can't say I won't get rid of slavery, or I won't get women the right to vote. That's the same argument as saying I'll vote for the Democrats over the Republicans. Incrementalism doesn't mean that you can't take on better values, as like Hillary Clinton and her willingness to embrace marriage equality. That would be a good example of how the Democratic Party eventually, as it became politically possible, they all switched over, and even a lot of the Republicans now support marriage equality. Maybe that'll be some positive outcome of this terrible thing that happened in Orlando today, where maybe it will, since the worst shooting in U.S. history was actually targeted at a gay club, maybe it will get a little more understanding and empathy for the plight of the LGBT community. Who knows? But I don't know why I went off on that tangent all of a sudden, but that is the last clip I want to show on the Democratic side, although it kind of went off on a tangent in the clip before I went off on a tangent in my discussion of the clip there. I do have one more clip I want to show. This is the retiring Democratic senator from California, Barbara Boxer, who is generally a good liberal senator, as Bill Maher pointed out in his interview with her. I think the full interview is available for free on HBO's real-time channel on, or the real-time channel on YouTube from HBO. And I put a link down to that in the video description. This is the clip where they talk about marijuana legalization, and Barbara Boxer talks about the reason she may come over to supporting marijuana legalization in California when it's on the ballot this November. There's a big ballot initiative, which is imperfect, but I think is worth supporting. And the reason she's saying that she might support it, however, are totally bogus. They have to do with blood and breathalyzer tests for marijuana, which aren't supported by science, based on something I studied up on about a year ago that I will discuss after I show that clip of Bill Maher and Barbara Boxer not really giving good information on the relationship between marijuana blood levels and driving impairment over here.
You were a great liberal voice for all those years and very consistent. You voted in ways that most of your colleagues, even the liberals, didn't, like the Iraq War. You didn't vote the way Hillary did.
Yeah.
Glass-Steagall, gay marriage. I think you were only one of 8 to defend gay marriage. The one time I was hoping you would come out for something I wanted was Prop 19 in 2010. It was on the ballot to legalize marijuana. It lost narrowly. No Democrat in this state defended it. But here it is, 6 years later. What do you think? Time's come for the wacky weed, Senator.
Well,
come on.
I'm actually going to surprise you. I'm leaning in favor. Yeah. Leaning. The one thing...
I could push you right over after the show.
No violence.
No.
There's just one issue that's a serious one I'm looking at, which is worrisome from Colorado and Washington State, where they've seen fatalities, driver fatalities go up. But there is something in the initiative that does address it, so I'm hoping I'll be able to support it this time.
Most of the driver fatalities are from alcohol, which has always been legal.
Well,
not always.
Well.
I mean, come on. It's just not fair.
You know what?
It's not fair.
There are more driver fatalities. I'm telling you, this isn't, it's just, than there were before. But we can address it. We need to figure out how, the breathalyzer idea, the blood test idea, and then once we do that. But anyhow, I am leaning.
Okay,
in your
direction. I'm glad to hear it. And just to put your mind at ease, I drive better when I'm stoned. Don't drive stoned.
So I thought the information there that Barbara Boxer was talking about, how we need breathalyzers or blood tests for marijuana intoxication if we're going to legalize marijuana because there are increased fatalities in Colorado. I don't know what statistics she was looking at, but about a year ago, I was involved in this think tank that indirectly gave some input to some other people who were talking about this marijuana. So I'm not saying I had any direct or even two-step in, this is 3-step indirect possible input, which I didn't even really contribute much to this think tank, but I did get to read some materials about the upcoming marijuana legalization initiative. This is through my ACLU activism, and one of the things I read was this interesting California Law Review article that came out in August 2015. I think I actually read this while it was still in draft form, but here it is in California Law Review. That's like Bolt, Berkeley, really good law school. It's written by this woman, Andrea Roth. It's long and complicated. It's called The Uneasy Case for Marijuana as Chemical Impairment Under a Science-Based Jurisprudence of Dangerousness. And why it's really interesting is she goes through this whole history of how they came up with the blood alcohol content. It was originally 0.15 that they came up with, and this whole history of the drunkometer. And the way they proved it was scientifically valid is through these studies where they would study accidents, especially single car fatal accidents involving alcohol and toxin, or they look at all the single car fatal accidents and see what percentage involved alcohol levels over 0.5, 0.10, 0.15, and then they compared it to the blood alcohol levels of the general driver population. That's the key part, because you can't just find what the, if people have a certain level in their blood, you have to compare it to all drivers, and if there's a increased risk of an accident, especially a one-car fatal accident, then that should show up in the study. And it should show up, if you look at different blood levels, it should show up at the blood level where it really makes a difference. It shouldn't show up at 0.05, but it should show up at 0.10 or 0.15 or whatever. And they did show a definite correlation, and that's how they came up with blood alcohol content as correlating with danger in driving. The problem is with marijuana, there may or may not be impairment from marijuana on driving, and Bill Maher seemed to give conflicting advice on that and what he said to Barabara Boxer. But what the evidence, there are several studies, and they're talked about in that Law Review article, that show that what there isn't a correlation between is it's like nanograms per milliliter in the blood. I think that's the measurement they use. Just there isn't any correlation between the blood level and dangerousness, because there may not be a correlation between the blood level and whether someone's intoxicated or not. And maybe marijuana intoxication makes people drive worse, maybe it doesn't. But they can't use the blood level to decide, or a breathalyzer or a blood test, if they can't duplicate those alcohol studies. And if you look at this Law Review article, you'll see that there's actually some evidence that the higher blood levels are more prevalent in the general driving population than in the people who had the accidents, meaning that it actually lowers the risk. And there was this one study that it's actually stimulants that raise the risk, which that's devastating because so many commercial drivers in this country use stimulants. But anyway, I just wanted to comment on that discussion with Barabara Boxer that Bill Maher had, because they seem to be giving out all this misinformation about blood levels of marijuana and whether that's an important way to judge whether people are impaired driving. And I did all this reading about a year ago, and it's a really long Law Review article, but if you're interested in the topic, I think it gives citations and a lot of evidence that show that you can't use blood levels, like you can't use a breathalyzer or a blood test for marijuana intoxication like you can for alcohol intoxication, and there's a good scientific reason for it. So anyway, that's the last clip of the program. It was a depressing morning. I watched a lot of coverage of the Orlando shooting, and I watched how it started going political on some of the news programs with the guests, and certainly on Twitter and Facebook. There's a lot of politicization of what's a tragedy already. I showed the Donald Trump tweet, but he certainly wasn't the only one. And so next week I have a wedding to go to next Sunday, and the chance of I may be able to do it early like I did this week because I have this graduation to go to, and that's why I have to finish up. But if I can't, then I will do my Sunday clip roundup a week from tomorrow. It would be Monday, June 20th. So if you don't see it Sunday, it'll be coming around on Monday. Look for that. I'll be doing it from Lake Tahoe, I believe. So the lighting probably will be messed up. I don't know exactly. I'm still working on all the details how I'm going to do it. But look for that next week. If you want to help support these Sunday clip roundups, especially when they may not get monetized for covering sensitive topics like terrorism or mass shootings, there's a link down in the video description to my Patreon page where you can become one of my patrons. Or I haven't put it in for the live show, but if you're watching a recorded show, there should be a little eye up there you can click on and give me direct support through YouTube fan funding. And I appreciate all the people who help out that way, as well as the people who show up as live viewers and keep me company while I'm showing all the clips I picked out. Those people who post comments, both the live show, the recorded show, and who give me a thumbs up down there and share this video around social media. All that helps me out. So I appreciate all of my viewers and supporters and commenters, and even the people who don't like me so much but just show up to explain why that is. So thanks for that. And I guess until I have time to put up another video, or until next Sunday or Monday when I do the clip roundup next time, I will be seeing all of you around the internet.